Are you waking up or going to bed stressed or not really understanding why a promotion or a campaign that you're running isn't working? Now, I'm probably talking specifically about something where you're actually spending money on an advertisement to get that said ad or campaign to be seen by more people. But this strategy could be broken. And I'm going to explain to you why. So I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's also a client. He did say I could name his name. So I'm going to give him a shout out, Kenya Williams at I Shine. And he details cars, high-end cars, and does some really fancy things that I can't even talk about, stuff that costs a lot of money. So to get your car detailed costs hundreds of dollars. To use this specific type of coating to make your paint last longer, it costs, I think the minimum is $1,800 and up. So that's an expensive buy. And he's spending a couple $100 a month on running ads through different mediums and platforms to get his business seen by other people who potentially would be interested in using his service. And the ad is basically, call me. Okay? To most people, that's the strategy that you should be doing. Well, I'm going to throw up a big X and tell you why that's a terrible strategy, especially if you are selling something that's quite expensive. So the last time you bought a house, bought a car, bought something that wasn't like a Snickers bar at your 7-Eleven, you probably spent a lot of time investigating whatever that product or service is. However, many of us will try to just get that person to buy because they saw your ad. Number one, remember, it takes 6 times for someone to see your ad in the first place. But then number 2, you're then hoping that everything on your website or your ad will get that person to buy your thing, your service, your product, your car, your house, whatever, right there on the spot. And that's just not the case. So I told Kenya, I said, let's change your strategy from going to buy my thing from that ad. Like, oh, call me or just show up, right? These things are difficult. This process of getting that person to do that thing is difficult. But instead, I said, let's try this strategy where you're pushing people that you're spending money on these ads to, instead of call you or show up at your office, to basically get to that next step. Get to that next step where you can get their contact information so that you can follow up with them at a later time. Now remember, most people aren't in the buying mood, even if they're searching for your services, product, tools, widgets, business, brand, whatever, and aren't going to have their wallets out of their pocket at that time. So you might be saying, Zach, that's not true. I don't believe that. Well, how often do you, when you're on Amazon, search for something and then buy it immediately? 65% of carts, shopping carts online, are left with something in them. That includes Amazon, right? What does Amazon do afterwards? They follow up with you and say, ping, you were looking at this item, but you did not purchase it. And then they do that enough, and then you're like, oh, maybe I do want that, right? By taking advantage of a multi-billion-dollar business and their strategy, how could you leverage that yourself? My strategy, I don't have a name for it yet because maybe I do have a name for it. I just not thinking about it. But my strategy is, if you're going to use an advertisement or a campaign to get someone that normally isn't looking at your stuff to be looking at your stuff, don't immediately try to sell them. Instead, try to get their contact information. What could their contact information be? Their name, their email, their phone number, their mailing address. Basically anything from them that you can then follow up with them at a later time to then get them down this process so that when you do sell them something, you get the result that you want. that conversion rate is higher, right? We've talked about the used car salesman or your internet salesperson who's trying to sell you something that you don't want. Don't be like that person, right? So instead, try and get their contact information. Now, there's always outliers. Yes, sometimes ads do lead towards immediate sales and stuff like that. But usually, that person has an already existing relationship with you, and they're getting further down that kind of process or that playbook. So instead, what I want you guys to do is these people who you're attempting to get to your site from some sort of advertisement or campaign, to, instead of trying to sell to them, instead provide them something of other value, right? In Kenya's case, I said, maybe there is like the 5 or 10 things that you can do to keep your car detailed after you just spent hundreds of dollars on a detail. And you could provide that information to people in return for their contact information, right? Some sort of, how do you do this? Or some sort of, ebook, or maybe it's even a physical book, right? Maybe I give away my book in return for their contact information, or a couple chapters of my book in return for their contact information, so that they read it, they like it, and they come back and go, I want more. And that's basically what you're attempting to do. So when you're trying to get someone to come to your website, when you're trying to get someone to do that task that you want them to do, are you making it easy for them to do? Number one, right? In Kenya's case, I do not believe he was making it easy. But then number two, what are you doing to make sure that you can contact them afterwards if they don't pull the trigger right then and there, which ultimately most people never do? Does that make sense? So instead of trying to sell right there on the spot, when you just met this person, they just learned about you, they don't think you're credible, they don't think you're an authority, they don't know that they're going to get something of value from you. Instead, you try and get their contact information so that you can follow up with them at a later time and get them closer and closer to saying yes, because you proved your value to them over and over and over and over again. So instead of trying to sell so much on the first date, or even before the first date, what are you doing to try and get that contact information so that you can follow up with them later, right? So if I was single and I wanted a girl's number, I could say, hey, can I get your number? Then I have to play that game of following up over. See how all this is business principles work in life too, right? So if you are a girl looking to date a guy, maybe you get his phone number, or you friend them on Facebook or whatever. It's about baby steps to create a stronger relationship so that when you do sell to them, they pull out their wallets and they make it rain. Well, hopefully more than 4 $1 bills. Ooh, I've always wanted to do this on air. Making it rain right here on Zack Miller Live. So think about this process. If you are providing an advertisement or a campaign and you're just trying to sell that person to buy and it's the first time they've met you, I just dropped all my money. What do you think is going to happen? We know what's going to happen. They are not going to be a fan of you. They're not going to buy from you. And ultimately, you are going to have wasted however much money you were spending on that campaign or ad. So instead, get their contact information and create a relationship with them, and then get them further down that process so that when it's time, boom, you get the result that you want. I promise this will get you better results. And before we leave, this past Monday, which was yesterday, I released my first ever weekly roundup of Zack Miller Says. That includes all of the content from the 5 weekday editions of Zack Miller Live, as well as the content from the 1004 show that was released this week, all in one weekly recap email. If you guys are interested in that, I will post that in the description and the show notes so that you guys can check it out. It's free to you. It'll go out every Monday at 10:15. I wanted it to go out at 10:13 to be weird, but when I went to schedule it, it did not let me. I don't know why. It just didn't. So you guys can check that out. I will put the link in right here. Boom! Just check out the description. Last week, it got an 83% open rate. Thanks, Mom. Just kidding. My mom isn't subscribed. But if you're interested in that, check it out. Also, wherever you're listening to this, subscribe so that you can get the content in your earbuds or earpieces or whatever they're called, just your ears, each and every day that I do this, which is almost every day of the week. Hope you guys have wonderful days. Gary Locke. I'll text you back in a little bit. Peace.